Howdy, my name is Nonat, and welcome to my guide for the Skeleton Ancestry for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This just came out in the new Book of the Dead, and there's a lot of other archetypes in this book, like Ghost, Ghoul, and Vampire, but those are more like class archetypes. Skeletons have been given a special treatment, becoming a full, playable base ancestry. Not even a versatile heritage. You can be a dwarf, you can be an elf, or you can be a skeleton. So let's talk about that, how deep it actually goes, and what you get out of this ancestry. But first, while we're covering something so dark and spooky, it's a perfect time to talk about the sponsor for today's video, the Deck of Many Quests. Specifically, the Gothic Horror expansion. This is an expansion to the original Deck of Many Quests, but also functions as its own standalone 200-card quest generator. If you're unaware, the Deck of Many Quests is a deck that consists of quest cards, item cards, and encounter cards, and by mixing and matching the three different types, you can create completely unique, randomly generated quests for your table. You can take these cards and make a quick little one-shot, or you can base your entire campaign around the cards drawn. And in this new expansion, Gothic Horror, all of the cards are, of course, horror-themed, skeletons and vampires and other things that are coincidentally really good to talk about in a video like this one. Right now, if you follow the link below, you can check out the Kickstarter for the Gothic Horror expansion, which in just 2 days has crushed their original goal and is still climbing because it's a quality product. I've been sponsored by the Deck of Many Quests before in the past, and they are phenomenal. Right now, for $30, you can get the digital version of the original Deck of Many Quests and the Gothic Horror expansion, and their 5th edition horror campaigns. This is a pack of original horror adventures specifically for D&D 5e, but if you're a Pathfinder player, don't let that scare you off. The decks are completely system agnostic. Whether you use Pathfinder, D&D, or even something like Fate, there's a place for these cards at your table. So check it out using the link in the description and support Lunch Break Heroes. They're a great YouTube channel, they make great products with the Deck of Many Quests, and I'm excited to see what comes next for them. Thank you, Deck of Many Quests, for sponsoring the channel. Now back to Skelly-Mans. Skeletons are of course a rare ancestry. Your GM has every right to say no, you cannot be undead in my campaign. But also, because you're a skeleton, they're pretty brittle, with only 6 hit points at base. You're a medium creature with a speed of 25 feet, overall pretty standard, with boosts to dexterity, charisma, and a free boost while you take a flaw to intelligence. Honestly, I'm surprised the boost is to dexterity. When I think skeleton, sort of the last thing I think is dexterous and mobile. I guess if it was like a zombie, it might have been more strength-based, but I guess I don't know what else you would give a skeleton. I guess you do see a lot of skeleton archers in media, and dexterity is required for that, so fair enough, Paizo. Fair enough. They speak Common and Necrol, have the skeleton and undead trait, and get the basic undead benefits, which I will not be covering in this video. I will cover that when I talk about the other undead archetypes, because this video is already going to be long enough. But it's pretty much what you expect. Negative healing, you don't need to eat, etc., etc. Skeletons specifically, instead of needing to eat food, actually need to collect the bones of fallen enemies, or allies for that matter, so that they can mend and replace their own bones as needed. Now, the skeleton heritages might be one of my favorite parts of this ancestry, because the heritage is basically what you were in life. Depending on the original ancestry of this character, that will determine your heritage. For example, the fodder skeleton is the basic humanoid skeleton. They tend to originally be humans, but you could easily get away with probably any medium traditionally shaped ancestry, and it increases your movement speed from 25 to 30 feet. The compact skeleton, as you might assume, is the smaller ancestries like halflings and goblins. Your size becomes small, and you do get the quick squeeze skill feat even if you're not trained in acrobatics, and additionally, if a space is tight but doesn't need to be squeezed through, you actually move at full speed. It's not even difficult terrain. The sturdy skeleton is for like a dwarf or an orc or any other really hardy race of creature, and it increases your base hit points from 6 to 10, and you get Die Hard for free. Monstrous skeletons would likely be something more like a catfolk or maybe even a tiefling with a tail or horns, as it gives you an unarmed strike like a claw, tail, or horn attack. Regardless of which one you pick, they all deal 1d6 damage with the finesse trait, but the type of damage they deal does change. For example, horns deal piercing, while claws deal slashing. Overall, one of these heritages should fit regardless of the original ancestry of your character, so there's always an option here, even for you weird Galoma people. As in life, so in death is a pretty cool feat. It allows you to mimic your original ancestry. It doesn't have to be your original one, but it's heavily implied that it should be. You gain the adopted ancestry feat for that ancestry, and additionally, as long as you are covered head to toe in clothing, you do not need to roll deception to pretend to be a living creature. You just have to be able to hide your little bony fingies. Keep in mind though, this just means people won't be passively discovering you're a skeleton. If someone gets sus of you, they can still roll perception to figure you out. This feat's ridiculous. What? Collapse. Once per 10 minutes as a reaction and you get critically hit, you can make the critical hit a normal hit. Now this does also knock you prone, so you have to stand up, but that's insane. Isn't that like a level 17 armor rune? Okay, it's a level 12 rune for fortification, level 18 for greater fortification, but even then, the level 12 version only negates a crit on a flat 17 or higher, and this is a reliable reaction that works 100% of the time. Now, there is a really interesting point of text here that also limits this. While collapsed, you can't act except to stand. This means you can't crawl away. This means you can't squeeze or do anything except for stand back up. And that means if they have attack of opportunity, this is going to be a problem. But overall, for a level 1 ancestry feat, this is nuts. This is going to save your life once per encounter. Play dead is honestly kind of broken. For a single action, you play dead. You fall to pieces, you lay there completely still, and as long as you don't take any move actions or any real physical actions, you cannot be discerned from a normal skeleton. You know, a non-living one. Unliving? Non-unliving skeleton? Now, if someone's suspicious, they can still attempt to recall knowledge or seek you with perception or some kind of brain skill, but if you're lying dead in a graveyard or in another big pile of bones and they don't have a reason to check, you automatically succeed. There's no stealth check, there's no deception check. As long as you're in a non-suspicious area where bones should be, people will just believe you unless they've met you before. If they know you, they know you're an animated skeleton, and they recognize your bones, they automatically succeed. Undead empathy is really cool. It's almost like the feat that lets you make an impression on animals, but it works on mindless undead. You can use diplomacy on a mindless undead. Now the caveat here is if that undead is the thrall of a higher level creature, you pretty much have to get a critical success on your diplomacy, otherwise they're probably going to hurt you. But this is super cool. I love the ability to interact with mindless undead. That's something that nobody else really gets to do. Past life at level 5 is really kinda lame. You get additional lore, which means you become trained in additional lore of any kind. It's cool, getting a lore skill is useful, but it just makes you trained. This is just a level 5 ancestry feat to get one new skill. It can be good, don't get me wrong, especially once you're that far into a campaign, being able to choose a lore to just have, that's pretty good. It's just sad that it doesn't increase at higher levels. Okay, well-armed might be the best thing I've read in a while. For a single action as a skeleton with this feat, if you are holding a one-handed weapon in one arm, you can grab the base of that arm, rip it out of the socket, and attack with 5-foot reach using the weapon at the end of the arm you're holding. Additionally, the creature that you attack, if it is 10 feet away from you or at the extent of your reach, they're flat-footed to this. This means that Okay, it is 2 actions. It is one action to break it off and wield the arm, and then another action to actually attack with reach. That's a lot more balanced. Or does it work that way? It only says if your next attack is a strike. Okay, I think I understand. I'm not cutting this out because I like you guys to see my brain process when I read these feats sometimes, so sorry if it's a little confusing to follow, but let me put this now in order of points. For one action, you rip your arm off, and if you have a one-handed weapon, you get 5 foot extra reach with that weapon. If your next action is to strike, the target at max reach is flat-footed. Now, you can keep attacking with reach with that arm, but the flat-footed only applies the first time because it's catching them off guard. Once they can see you're attacking at reach, the flat-footed goes away. So one action detach, one action attack, they're flat-footed, and then one action attack again, they're not flat-footed. Okay, we got there. Welcome to my brain. It's terrifying. You really gonna name a feat Bone Missile? I thought we were past this with bone magic. Or dangle. Bone Missile! You can use your own bones as ammunition for a bow or crossbow, not for a firearm. If you do this, you snap a bone off and you take 2 damage. Specifically, you lose 2 hit points. You can't reduce this damage. But it acts as an arrow, and your next strike with that ranged weapon deals 2 additional negative damage. All of this scales at levels 12 and 19 to 3 and 4 HP loss and negative damage respectively. Overall, pretty cool. If you're fighting something that has a weakness to negative damage, this is a fantastic feat. Rejuvenation token is immortality. If you have this feat, you're basically a lich. Part of your soul is tied to a material belonging. If you die, but that material belonging is still in one piece, you respawn. Now, there's a little bit of a caveat here in that you still need somebody able to cast Resurrect or Raise Dead, but this object with your soul in it can be used as the focus. Now, there are some limitations which I, as a player and GM, really respect Paizo for putting into place. First off, when revived this way, you lose a memory. The GM just gets to pick something that you no longer remember, having lost it in the transition of death back to life, unlife. What is a skeleton? Also, you need to spend a full week of downtime to re-imbue the item with your soul, meaning if you die again within a week or before you can spend a week of downtime, you're dead for good. So this is immortality, just with a lot of asterisks and fine print. Skeletal resistance. You get 2 resistance to a lot of things, including cold, electricity, fire, piercing, and slashing, increasing at levels 13 and 17 to 3 and 4, respectively. Passive resistance. It's great. The only time this isn't that useful is if you have something like heavy armor specialization, which might already give you resistance to that. But hey, if you're a skeleton and you get the armor resistance that gives you resistance to bludgeoning, then boom, you're in business. You're resistant to all physical damage. Skeletal transformation is just so cool. Once per day, you can transform into an animal, casting it at 3rd, 4th, or 5th level, but the animal you turn into is a skeleton. In this shape, you get to keep all of your skeletal feats as long as they don't require hands or communication, but you look like a skeletal animal. If you turn into a bear, you're a skelebear. If you turn into a wolf, you're a skeleton good boy. This is really cool. It's a bit high level, but I understand why. Skeleton Commander. Long story short, you get the Create Undead ritual as well as the recipes for a few skeleton undead specifically. You get a +2 to the check to cast the ritual, and you don't need a secondary caster, meaning if you have a day of downtime, you can just summon up some undead. Granted, they're super expensive, so be careful. So I know this feat is called Bone Swarm, but I know they wanted to call it Bone Storm, but they didn't because of a certain World of Warcraft boss. Bone Storm! But once per day for 2 actions, you turn your body into a whirlwind of flying bones for 1 minute. You become huge. You get the Swarm trait. You are now a playable swarm, and you get a fly speed of 40 feet, along with the following characteristics. You can't be grabbed, prone, or immobilized. You gain a weakness to area and splash damage. You cannot speak, you cannot cast spells, you can't do anything that requires any specific motor skills. You are still affected by mental effects, unlike normal swarms, but you do retain any skeletal feat benefits as long as they don't require hands. And the big one, as long as there is a creature inside of your space, you can deal 10d6 bludgeoning damage for 2 actions. This is a basic reflex save. that's really good. You just become a 10d6 swarm that can move 40 feet for one action and then deal 10d6 to everything inside. The hardest part is it says all creatures, not just enemies. Or you can weigh your options. On one hand, once per day, you can become a swirling storm of slashing, bludgeoning, bony death for 1 minute. Or you can cast 6th level harm once an hour. Like, that's still good. You can use it for damage. You can use it to heal yourself, especially because at 6th level, that's healing yourself for 6d8 plus 48. It's not bad. It's pretty good, actually. It's like 60 hit points on average, once per hour. But, like, Bone Storm, though. And that's the Skeleton Ancestry in Pathfinder 2e. Lots of interesting feats available here. It's definitely designed different than a couple of other Ancestries because, you know, it doesn't have flesh. It's got a couple of cool things it can do, like fall to pieces and come back. I think they've done a lot of cool stuff here, but let me know down in the comments what you think about the Skeleton Ancestry. Are you digging it? Are you hating it? Do you wish the other undeads got the same full Ancestry treatment rather than just class archetypes? I want to hear from you. You know I love hearing from you. This book overall has been great. If you have not at least picked up the PDF for Book of the Dead, I highly recommend it. So, that is it for me. I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons for supporting me in everything I do. If you would like to get your name on this increasingly long list, check out the link in the description. While you're down there, click the link to check out the Kickstarter for the Deck of Many Quests Gothic Horror expansion. They'll make some great adventures for your skeleton PCs. That's all for me. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no nat ones.